What if the prophecy wasn't meant for one, but two? What if the fire and the shadow moved in unison, Valyrian steel and silent steps striking death itself together? Snow crushed beneath Arya's boots as she raced through the chaos of Winterfell's courtyard. Ghosts moved in every direction, half-dead screams, shattered blades, and the grinding of wights clawing at stone. The Night King had broken through the gates. The dead surged like an unstoppable tide, their numbers endless, their hunger unrelenting. But she wasn't afraid. She wasn't running. She was moving with purpose towards the Godswood, where Jon was already bleeding. Longclaw's edge hissed through the air as he carved a path through the undead. His arms ached. His breath came in ragged gasps. He had watched too many fall already. Lyanna, Ed, men who fought beside him since Castle Black. He had yelled himself hoarse, calling for help that didn't come. The dragon fire had failed. Daenerys had fallen back. Bran was unguarded, and the Night King was coming. He saw him, gliding silently across the snow, like death in human form. His icy blue eyes locked on Bran beneath the heart tree. And Jon knew. It would end now, one way or another. But as Jon pushed through the last line of wights, a blur cut past him, silent, swift, deadly. Arya. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Their eyes met for only a heartbeat, and in that moment Jon knew she wasn't just there to fight. She was there to finish it, together. Wait. Did anyone else feel that? Arya and Jon, side by side, against the Night King. This is about to get insane. Smash that like if this idea gives you chills, because what happens next? It changes everything. Arya leapt first. The Night King turned slowly, almost mockingly. He didn't see her as a threat, not even worth raising his blade. But this time, she wasn't flying solo into the unknown. She didn't jump with blind faith. She was the blade. Jon was the hammer. And this time the Night King didn't just face a knife in the dark. He faced the fire of House Stark reborn. Jon shouted. His voice cracked with rage and defiance. He charged from the front as Arya came from the side. The Night King reacted faster than any man had a right to. Ice met steel. His blade clanged against Longclaw, and the shock sent Jon stumbling. Arya lunged, dagger drawn, but was caught mid-air. The Night King's icy hand clamped around her wrist, her dragonglass dagger shattered in his grip. He sneered, but Jon roared. "Now!" Arya twisted, her free hand flipping something through the air. The Valyrian steel dagger, the one she took from Littlefinger, the one Bran gave her, the one meant for the king. Jon caught it mid-spin. In one motion he stabbed upward, burying it deep beneath the Night King's ribs as Arya kicked free from his grip. The Night King's eyes widened. He staggered, but he didn't fall, because the cold was older than steel, stronger than prophecy, and death did not go down with a single blade. He screamed, a high bone-shattering shriek. All across Winterfell, the dead froze. Wights collapsed mid-step. Dragons overhead shrieked in confusion. Even the wind seemed to pause. Arya didn't stop. She landed behind him and slashed across his legs, cutting deep into his tendons. He fell to one knee. Jon spun, twisting the blade. The dagger hissed as ice cracked along his chest. Still, he didn't die. But here's where it gets crazy, Bran spoke. Not out loud, not with words, but through their minds. Together, now. Fire and shadow, the old and the new. Jon understood. He dropped the dagger. Arya caught it mid-air, and with one clean, brutal motion, she drove it into the Night King's neck from behind. The blade pierced cold flesh. The Night King gasped. His body convulsed. Then, silence. He exploded into shards of ice, his screams swallowed by the wind, and with him, every single wight fell. The undead collapsed like puppets with severed strings. Winterfell fell into a sudden, impossible silence. Wait. What just happened? That wasn't just a kill, that was a freaking prophecy fulfilled by two Starks. Arya and Jon, the sword and the shadow. This changes everything. Jon dropped to his knees, blood still dripping from his side. Arya stood panting, hands trembling, her face smeared with sweat and soot. But she was alive. They both were. Bran opened his eyes beneath the heart tree. The crows that circled above vanished. The weirwood's red leaves stopped trembling, and in that moment, the North was saved. But not at peace, because what followed was suspicion. Daenerys watched from the tower. She saw the blue fire vanish. She saw the Night King fall, not two. Her dragons not to her bloodline but to a Stark. Two Starks, and in her heart something cracked. Power, destiny, the throne. Everything she had fought for, sacrificed for, was slipping. Arya, the faceless girl, had become the face of victory. And Jon. Jon was no longer just the brooding bastard of Winterfell. He was a kingslayer, a savior, a Targaryen, and worst of all, the people loved him for it. Smoke still rose from the walls of Winterfell. The scent of burning flesh, steel, and old blood lingered like a curse. Survivors stumbled through the aftermath with hollow eyes. They had won, but not without cost. And in the north, a victory. Like this didn't bring peace. Jon stood on the battlement, staring out over the piles of corpses that once walked. His sword was still at his hip, but his grip on it had loosened. The Night King was dead. He died by their hands. His and Arya's, and yet something wasn't right. Behind him murmurs grew louder with each passing hour. She killed him. No, Jon dealt the fatal blow. It was the girl, the wolf. Does it matter? He's dead, and we're alive. But it did matter, especially to Daenerys. She hadn't spoken to Jon since the battle ended. Not once, not even a nod. She remained in her chambers, her dragon curled outside the tower like a silent, brooding sentinel. Grey Worm kept to her side, his unsullied forming a cold wall around her presence. Arya noticed first. "She's watching us," Arya said, sitting on the edge of the Godswood pond, washing blood from her hands. "She's grieving," Jon replied without looking up. "No, she's calculating." Pause. Anyone else sensing that slow, cold burn tension creeping in? Because if you thought the Night King was the final boss, nah. This is Game of Thrones. And Daenerys Stormborn is just getting started. Bran was the only one untouched. By emotion. Or perhaps too far beyond it. "You know what she sees, don't you?" he asked Jon later that night, his voice almost too calm. "What do you mean?" "She saw the people chant your name. She saw Arya's blade. She saw her dragons fail. And in her eyes, that's betrayal." Jon said nothing. But deep down, Bran was right. The next morning, the politics began. At the great hall of Winterfell, the living gathered to mourn and to talk. Daenerys entered last in black, not a single speck of northern furs on her shoulders. No snow, no tears, just fire behind her eyes. "Let it be known," she began, her voice smooth and regal, "that the long night has ended because of our unity." The living stood together, the dead fell. Polite applause followed. "But," she continued, letting the silence stretch, "we must not forget who holds the future of this realm." She turned toward Arya and Jon. Jon lowered his eyes. Arya didn't move. "I came here to save Westeros," Daenerys said. "I brought dragons. I brought fire. And I will rebuild the world, not for lords, but for everyone." Sansa rose. "Then you'll understand why the North will remain free," whispers erupted. Daenerys didn't flinch. "You speak of freedom, yet cling to power," Dany said coolly. "The Night King is dead. Let's not divide victory with ego." Jon stood up. "No one's dividing anything." Arya shot him a sharp look. "Speak, for yourself." Tyrion watched it all unfold with that same haunted expression he'd worn since King's Landing. He knew what was coming, even if no one else did. "Okay, quick pulse check. We've got Jon trying to play peacemaker, Arya refusing to kneel, Sansa demanding independence, and Daenerys holding a grudge like wildfire in her chest. This is about to blow up." Later that night, Jon tried to reason with her. Again. "You can't fight everyone, Dany. Not after this. We need to rebuild." "I did not cross the narrow sea to beg northern lords for scraps," she snapped. Jon reached for her hand. She pulled away. "They love you," she whispered. "They love you too. No, they fear me. They look at me like I'm already the enemy. You and your sister and your sister." Her voice cracked on the last word. Jon's jaw tightened. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying if you want peace, you'll have to choose where your loyalty lies." Jon stepped back. "That sounds like a threat." "No," she said coldly. "It's a promise." "Wait, did you catch that? Did Daenerys just draw the line between Jon and the throne with blood? Because next she's going to make a move that no one, especially Arya, will forgive." 3 days later, Arya was gone. No goodbye, no trail, just gone. Jon knew what that meant. "She's going to King's Landing," Bran told him. "She's not going to wait. Not again." "To do what?" Bran looked toward the rising sun. "To finish the game." Jon didn't sleep that night, not because he was afraid for Arya, because he knew she wasn't going there to die. She was going to kill Daenerys, and this time he wasn't sure she'd fail. Jon didn't leave Winterfell with ceremony. No guards, no banners. Just a black horse, a sword at his hip, and a storm in his heart. He rode through the snow like a ghost chasing a shadow, because that's what Arya had become. A ghost. A shadow. A dagger in the dark, pointed now not at the Night King, but at the Queen, who still believed the Iron Throne belonged to her by destiny. But this time, Arya wasn't waiting for prophecy. She was writing her own. In King's Landing, the scars from Cersei's fall still ran deep. Rubble lined the streets. The Red Keep was half rebuilt, guarded now by Unsullied, and a few remnants of Dothraki still, loyal to the Dragon Queen. And on the throne, where once fire and blood ruled, sat a woman who stared at the realm with hollow eyes and burning ambition. Daenerys. She gave orders like whispers now, calm and cold. No smiles, no speeches, only edicts. Food to be rationed, loyalty to be proven, whispers of rebellion met with quiet disappearances. Tyrion saw it. He always had. "She's turning into the very thing she swore to destroy," he told Varys, "ghost every night with a cup in hand. And the worst part is we gave her the fire. Okay, real talk, can we pause here? Because this is where things start to spiral. Dany thinks she's still the savior. But in Arya's eyes, she's become the next tyrant. And Arya doesn't miss. Arya had already entered the city. No one noticed. She wore no mask. She didn't need one. People ignored her. She was small, silent, unremarkable, until she chose not to be. She watched the unsullied patterns for 2 days, learned the Red Keep's new routes, mapped every window, every corner, every shadow, and when she stood in the same hall where she'd once looked upon Cersei from a distance, she knew this wasn't revenge. It was justice. "She won't listen to reason," Arya whispered, when Jon finally found her in the ruins beneath the septi of Baelor. "I know," Jon said. "She's already planning to burn the Vale, to force the North to submit. I know. She's not our queen." Jon looked down. "I don't know who is anymore." "You do," Arya said, stepping close. "You've always known." Jon didn't answer. He couldn't. The truth was too heavy. "I won't wait," Arya said. "Not again." And she left him there in silence, just like before the gods would, just like before everything changed. Oh my God. Jon's torn in half, one side bound to duty, one side bound to blood. And Arya. She's already chosen. This isn't just a throne fight. It's a war for the soul of Westeros. Daenerys sensed it, felt the shift. The air had changed. "She's here," she said to Grey Worm, pacing the throne room. "Arya Stark. I can feel her. We'll increase patrols. She won't come through the doors. She'll come through the walls." "You want her killed?" Daenerys turned. Her eyes burned like molten ice. "No. I want her to see what happens to traitors." That night, the bell tower burned. Arya had climbed the keep like a cat, slipped through cracks no knight could fit. But she wasn't expecting them to find Gendry first. His screams echoed through the keep like a hammer hitting bone. Jon heard it. By the time he reached the dungeons, it was too late. Gendry was chained, bloody, gasping, but alive. "Why?" Jon asked through clenched teeth. "She wanted to know who else would follow the wolves," Gendry coughed. "Who else believed in you?" That was the moment Jon knew. There was no turning. Back, no calming this storm. Daenerys was ready to rule alone or die trying. Wait, what? Did Daenerys just torture Gendry to bait Arya? And Jon still stuck in the middle? This is about to go full Red Wedding 2.0, but worse, because this time, the wolves are fighting dragons. The next morning, ravens flew from King's Landing, messages from the Queen, commands for the North to kneel, for Sansa to submit. None returned. Arya stood in the shadows of the Great Hall that evening, watching from a narrow slit in the stone. She could see Daenerys sitting on the Iron Throne, or what remained of it. A makeshift crown rested on her brow. Her dragon waited outside, wings curled like a watchful demon, and then Jon walked in. The hall went silent. Everyone could feel it, like storm clouds gathering inside stone. Daenerys smiled, thin and false. You've come to bend the knee." Jon didn't move. He looked at her like he didn't recognize her, like he was standing in front of ashes wearing a ghost's skin. "I've come to stop you," he said. Gasps. Tension like drawn bowstrings. She stood. "Then you've chosen your side." "I didn't want this," Jon said, "but you've made it the only way." Daenerys laughed once, short, sharp. "You're just like your father. Noble, stupid." Arya moved, silent, swift. Blade, drawn, but Daenerys had expected it. Dracarys, the wall exploded in flame. Arya rolled beneath a falling beam, her cloak ablaze, her skin blistering. Jon screamed her name, but Arya rose anyway and threw the dagger. It flew. Straight. Daenerys turned, just as Jon tackled her. The dagger pierced the throne behind her, and in that single second, everything shattered. The throne room was smoke and fury. The walls cracked. Flames hissed across the stone floor as Drogon roared outside, his shadow flashing across the stained glass like the wings of death. The dagger quivered in the melted iron behind Daenerys. Jon had tackled her at the last second. Not to save her, not exactly, but because a piece of him still believed in mercy. Arya lay sprawled beneath the collapsed pillar, coughing blood, her arms scorched, eyes wild with fury. Daenerys shoved Jon back. Her face twisted, rage, disbelief, betrayal. "You brought her here," she hissed. "You let her try to kill me." Jon stood slowly. "I brought her to stop you." "I am the storm," she screamed, her voice echoing through the hollowed hall. "You would trade fire for wolves, for shadows and lies?" Arya pulled herself up, using the wall for support. Blood trickled from her temple, but her eyes never left Daenerys. "You burned children," she said, voice like broken glass. "You think this throne makes you right? I ended a tyrant. You became one." Wait, are we watching Daenerys unravel in real time? This isn't just power hunger, it's delusion fed by fire. Jon's caught between vengeance and madness, and Arya, she's ready to kill. Again. This just hit a whole new level. Jon stepped. Between them, "Stop," he said. "No more blood." Arya didn't blink. "She won't stop." "I know." Daenerys tilted her head, her voice low now, dangerous. "Then do it. Kill me, Jon Snow. Show them you're no better than I am." He didn't move. Behind them, the throne sat twisted, melted by dragonfire, just barely still standing. A relic. "A curse. You think you're saving Westeros," she whispered. "They'll never follow you. You're not a king. You're a coward. You let love blind you." Jon's eyes flickered. Just for a moment. That was all Arya needed. She moved. But Daenerys had already called the dragon No! Jon's voice thundered. Too late. The wall behind them exploded as Drogon's head crashed through the stone, jaws open, fire boiling in his throat. Arya ducked. Jon threw himself at Daenerys, and in the chaos, steel met flesh. A gasp. Not from Arya. Not from Daenerys. From Jon. Her dagger was in his side, his eyes went wide. Blood poured from his ribs. Arya had missed her mark, or had she? Daenerys staggered back, horror overtaking her fury. "You stabbed him," she whispered. Arya stared, her blade trembling. I didn't mean..." Jon dropped to his knees, and, in that moment, Daenerys looked at Arya not like an enemy, but like a savior. "You chose," she said softly. "Thank you." Arya stared at her, then at Jon. His blood coated her hands. But Jon, he reached up, took her wrist, and whispered, "Do it now." "What?" "End it." Arya turned. Daenerys had her back turned, walking toward the throne like a ghost returning home. Arya ran, no hesitation. This time, she didn't miss. The dagger plunged between Daenerys' shoulder blades. She gasped, turned, saw. Arya's face, eyes full of sorrow, then crumpled at the foot of the Iron Throne. Wait, what just happened? Arya stabbed Jon, but saved him. Killed Daenerys, but hesitated. Jon let it happen. This is peak Game of Thrones energy right now. The throne's cursed. Fire has fallen, and the wolves just ended a queen, Drogon roared. The sound shook the keep to its bones. He clawed through the rubble, found Daenerys' body, sniffed at it, growled, then looked up at Jon, at Arya. The beast shrieked, eyes glowing with ancient rage. Arya stepped in front of Jon, blade up. Jon didn't move, but Drogon didn't burn them. Instead, he turned to the Iron Throne. With a guttural scream, he unleashed fire, not on the Starks, but on the symbol of everything that brought them here. The throne melted. Iron turned to liquid, 1,000 swords forged in conquest, reduced to ash. Then Drogon took Daenerys' body in his claws and flew into the sky. Gone. Silence returned to the throne room. Arya collapsed beside Jon, pressing her hand against his wound. "Why did you stop me?" "She needed to believe," Jon murmured. "Even for a moment. That someone still chose her." "You did," Arya whispered, "even when she didn't deserve it." Jon closed his eyes. The North had won. The war was over. But the price, it had gutted them. The wind howled through the broken towers of King's Landing. The skies were ash-grey. Smoke drifted from ruins that hadn't even cooled yet. In the great hall, now just a skeleton of charred beams and shattered stone, Jon Snow sat in silence. Arya stood watch by the archway, her sword still blood-stained, her face carved from ice. Daenerys was gone. Drogon had taken her into the clouds like some ancient god reclaiming his fury. The Iron Throne had melted, burned by the last dragon alive, a fitting end to a symbol soaked in blood and madness. But power doesn't vanish with the death of a queen. It waits, it watches, and soon it claws its way back. Okay, stop right here. Because you might be thinking, all right, the tyrant is dead, the throne is gone, what's left? But oh no, no, no. This is Westeros. The vultures are already circling, and next it gets brutal. Sansa arrived within days. She rode at the head of a small northern host, their banners stiff in the wind. She came not as a sister, but as warden of the north. As Queen Arya met her at the gates. "You killed her," Sansa said simply, eyes scanning the broken city. "We had to." "Did you?" Arya didn't answer. Inside, she found Jon still weak, still bleeding. Maesters from the Citadel had arrived, tending to his wounds, but it wasn't just his body that was broken. He hadn't spoken a word since the fire faded. "He'll recover," Arya said. Sansa looked at her. "And what about the realm?" Arya hesitated. "The throne's gone." "But not the claim," Sansa replied. "People will still look to someone. If not Dany, then Jon." Arya frowned. "He doesn't want it. He doesn't have a choice. And here it comes, the moment we all feared. With Daenerys gone, Jon becomes the most dangerous man in Westeros, not because he wants power, but because everyone else wants him to have it. And that's a death sentence. Meanwhile, word spread faster than wildfire. Daenerys is dead. Jon Snow killed her. No, Arya Stark did. The throne was destroyed. There is no king. Lords began gathering, from the Reach, the Vale, Dorne, all with one question: who rules now? Tyrion returned from exile, gaunt and haunted. He found Jon alone in what remained of the Tower of the Hand. "You didn't kill her," Tyrion said. Jon didn't respond. "But you didn't stop it either. Still nothing. I told you once, power resides where men believe it does. Right now, half the realm believes it sits in your hands. I don't want it," Jon whispered, "which is exactly why they'll trust you." Jon looked up, his eyes hollow. "She burned children, Tyrion. And now she's ashes." Jon's fists clenched. "It doesn't feel like justice. It rarely does." Pause. You hear that? That's the echo of a kingdom breaking. Nobody's cheering. Nobody's celebrating. Because when power changes hands this fast, it doesn't heal. It festers. And the North? It's done kneeling. Sansa made her move. On the third day she stood before the lords gathered in the Red Keep. "We owe no loyalty to the South," she said. "We bled for this war. The North stood alone when others hid. We ask for nothing now except our freedom." Some supported her, others stayed silent. But Gendry, bruised and barely standing, spoke up. "Arya killed the queen. Jon bled for it. If anyone deserves the crown—" Jon entered the room. "I don't want it." The hall froze. He limped forward, every step a reminder of the price he paid. "I'll go north," he said. "Back to the wall or beyond it. I've seen enough kings, enough thrones. Let someone else chase ghosts." Arya looked at him, mouth tightening. "You can't just run." "I'm not running," Jon replied. "I'm giving the realm a chance." Sansa didn't argue. She understood, but not everyone did. Lord Royce of the Vale stood. "So who rules then? Who speaks for Westeros?" Tyrion stepped forward, gaze sweeping the room. "No one," he said. "Not yet. Maybe never again. Maybe the realm doesn't need a throne to break us." Shock, murmurs, and then silence. Because, for the first time in centuries, there was no king, no queen, no dragon, just ashes and wolves. Snow fell over King's Landing like it belonged there. Not ash, not smoke, not dragonfire, just snow, soft, silent, almost peaceful. But beneath it, the city was far from calm. The Iron Throne was gone, the Queen was dead, and Jon Snow, the last man anyone might have trusted, had vanished beyond the wall without ceremony. No crown, no trial, no goodbye. Arya watched from a rooftop as the lords and ladies packed up their power, their pride, their politics. The council had agreed to a loose alliance of kingdoms, 7 realms loosely united, no longer under a single crown. The South would rule the South. The North would remain free. But unity? That was over. The age of wolves had begun. And wolves? Do not forget. Wait. Think about it. No king, no queen, and no central power. This isn't peace, it's a vacuum. And Westeros? It's full of people who hate vacuums. This next part? It's about ambition, revenge, and a plan that's already in motion. Sansa returned to Winterfell, crowned queen in the north with a crown forged not from gold, but steel. The people cheered. But her eyes stayed fixed on the horizon. "We're alone now," she said to Brienne one morning. "And that's exactly how we'll stay." But not everyone was content with silence. Down in the Reach, House Tarly began rallying smaller houses. "A realm without unity is a realm ready to burn," Randall's cousin declared. "We need order. We need a king." In dawn, whispers of a new queen of Sunspear began to circulate, young, cunning, and unbowed, and in the Riverlands a raven reached Arya. It came from Sansa. "There are talks of a gathering in Old Town. Lords seeking something to replace what we destroyed. I need your eyes, your skills. I need to know if another fire is coming." Arya didn't hesitate. She'd left King's Landing behind without looking back, but she hadn't gone west. Not yet. Not while the realm still smoldered. She rode alone, cloaked, silent. Ghosts followed her, and in Old Town she found more than whispers. She found banners, gold, red, black, a sigil not seen in decades, a black dragon, coiled, scarred, rising. From a flame, not Daenerys's banner. Another. Okay, what? Black dragon? In Old Town? Did someone survive, or is this a pretender rising in the ashes of the Targaryens? Either way, Arya just stumbled into something big. And trust me, you're going to want to hold your breath for what comes next. Inside the high tower, Arya moved like a shadow, slipping past guards through tunnels beneath the great library, and there, in the candlelit chamber of a secret council, she heard the name, Aegon. Her blood ran cold. That name. She peered through a crack in the stone and saw him, young, pale, eyes like frozen flame. He stood behind the table, surrounded by lords who whispered like vipers. "Son of Daenerys," one said. "Hidden during the war," said another. He was Never supposed to survive. But now he can restore what she lost. Arya's heart thundered. They were building another Targaryen, a child of fire, or at least the idea of one. She didn't believe it. Not yet. Not until she saw the proof. She waited until nightfall, crept into the boy's chamber. Watched him sleep. He couldn't be more than 9, and beside him, folded on silk, was a piece of dragon scale. Real, warm, still glowing faintly, Arya slipped. Out before dawn. No one saw her, no one ever did. She rode hard north, straight to Winterfell, straight to Sansa. The fire hadn't even cooled, and already the realm was thirsty for more. Sansa stood in the great hall of Winterfell when Arya returned, mud on her cloak, snow in her hair, and something colder than winter in her eyes. They're building another. Dragon, Arya said. Sansa didn't flinch. She had expected it, hoped she was wrong, but she rarely was. Who? She asked quietly. They're calling him Aegon, Arya replied. Son of Daenerys, hidden during the war. That's impossible. Arya nodded. I thought so too, but I saw him, the boy, and the lords gathering in Old Town? They believe. Sansa's lips pressed into a thin line. It doesn't matter if it's true. It only matters if they believe it. Arya pulled something from her cloak and dropped it onto the table between them. Dragon scale, still faintly warm. Sansa stared at it for a long time. Then it's not just belief, it's blood, and blood always calls for more. Okay. Pause. Right here. The game just shifted. Again. You thought Daenerys was the last threat from House Targaryen. Think again. Because now the realm has a new symbol. And the North. They've got the most dangerous weapon of all. 2 Starks who don't forget. By the next day, Sansa had summoned her bannermen. No alliances, she told them. Not this time. We will not kneel. We will not beg. If they raise dragons again, we raise our wolves higher. Some hesitated, but most remembered. They remembered the burning of Winterfell, the slaughter of their kin, the long night. They remembered the queen who flew too close to godhood and paid for it with her life. So they pledged steel to the north, not to conquer, but to defend. But Arya? Arya didn't wait for armies. She returned south under shadow, disguised, masked. The faces she wore weren't of the dead. They were of the desperate, the ordinary, the invisible, and what she saw scared her more than the Night King. Old Town wasn't planning for war, they were preparing for worship. The boy, this so-called Aegon, wasn't just a claimant. He was becoming a god. Priests spoke of prophecy. The prince that was promised, they whispered, the fire reborn. And behind it all, not the boy, but the woman who raised him. Hold up, did you catch that twist? This kid isn't leading the movement. He's the face, the figurehead. But the real danger? It's the mind behind him. And Arya's about to find out who she really needs to kill. Her name was Sarala, once a slave in Meereen, a handmaiden, forgotten. But after Daenerys died, she vanished, only to resurface years later with a child and a lie, or maybe the truth. Arya couldn't tell. And it didn't matter. Sarala had studied fire. She quoted prophecies like scripture. She gathered maesters, exiled priests, and broken lords, and the people loved her, not because they believed she'd save them, but because she gave them something new to worship. Hope, Arya knew then. This couldn't be killed with steel. It had to be burned at the root. But even shadows can't always strike first. She tried to slip into the boys' chambers again, but this time, they were waiting. Lady Stark, Sarala said from the shadows, as Arya stepped into the candlelit hall. You move well, but we've been watching. Arya froze. 6 guards, silent, armed, blocking every exit. Sarala stepped forward. You wear faces. You deal in death. But you never understood belief. That's why your kind always fails. Arya didn't blink. You think dressing up a child in fire makes you queen. I think when you killed Daenerys, you created the very god you feared, Sarala whispered, and now you've come to kill again. But this time, there will be no silence. Arya lunged, steel flashed, but Sarala had come prepared. She screamed, not in fear but as a signal. Within seconds, bells rang across Old Town. Wait. This is not a drill. Arya's cover is blown. The Targaryen loyalists have her cornered. Sarala just flipped the script. Arya isn't the hunter anymore, she's the target. This next part, it's about survival. And if you think the North is gonna let her die alone, oh, just wait. Arya barely escaped, wounded, bleeding. She vanished into the canals beneath Old Town, dragging herself through slime and shadow. She sent one raven, one word: war. Back in Winterfell, Sansa read the message. No emotion. She turned to Brienne. Call the banners. Brienne hesitated. It could be a trap. I know, Sansa said. But it doesn't matter. She looked out the window, toward the snow-covered north. If they want to play gods again, she said, then it's time they remember the North remembers. War didn't begin with armies. It began with silence, with the snow falling softly across Winterfell as Sansa's wolves gathered, with Arya bleeding through her cloak as she rode north again, barely alive but unbroken, with whispers crawling across the realm like rot. The dragon returns. They called him Aegon the Reborn, though he had no memory of Daenerys, no claim to the past, just the weight of it forced onto his young shoulders. A boy with fire in his name, raised to believe that gods bled Targaryen blood, but it wasn't him Arya feared. It was Sarala. She moved through courts like wildfire, speaking of unity, of destiny, of the last hope of fire. And the people, broken, poor, hungry, believed her. Because what's easier than following a child? Kneeling to a myth. Okay, buckle up. This is it. The final chapter. The last dance between the old blood of the North and the false gods of flame. Arya's wounded. Jon's gone. Sansa holds the sword now, and what she does with it will shape the realm forever. Winter came early. Sansa marched with 5,000 Northerners, no alliances, no Southron banners, just the direwolf flying high, above a sea of steel. And at her side, not Arya, not Jon Bran. He hadn't spoken since he'd seen the raven fall, but now, as they crossed into the Riverlands, his voice returned. There's no boy. Only fire. Sansa looked at him. What does that mean? The dragon died in King's Landing. Sarala raised only ashes. She made them believe it was flesh. It hit her like ice. The boy, a symbol, a puppet, not even real, or worse, real, but empty, created to control the realm through faith. Arya reached camp that night, half dead. She collapsed into Brienne's arms, her breath rasping. They're coming, she whispered. 10,000 from the Reach, from Dawn, from the Vale, all for him. Sansa knelt beside her. We don't need 10,000, Arya coughed. Blood. Then what do we have? Sansa looked to the hill behind them, a line of northern spears, silent, unshaking. We have the North, she said, and this is what Game of Thrones was always about. Not dragons, not fire, but cold steel. Family, memory, resolve. This is it. The final stand, and nobody walks away clean. The battle came at dawn. Sarala's army was 3 times their size. Banners of flame waved in the sunrise. Priests chanted. The boy, Aegon, was paraded in gold, pale and silent. He never spoke. Arya saw him through the scope of a crossbow she'd stolen the night before. He didn't blink. He didn't cry. He just stared. Forward, and Sarala. She stood above him, arms raised like a prophet. We bring unity, she cried. We bring the last flame. Sansa didn't reply. She just raised her hand, and thousands of arrows blackened the sky. The first line of Targaryen faithful fell before. They could raise shields. Then the charge. Brienne led the vanguard, silent, unshaking. The Northerners roared, "The North remembers!" as steel met fire. The screams echoed across the field. Blood soaked into frozen mud. Arya moved like a ghost, blade in hand, face wrapped. She reached the boy first. The guards tried to stop her. None lived to tell how. She stood over him, dagger raised, then paused. He looked up at her, eyes empty. No fear, no soul, just nothing. And she understood. He wasn't real. Not like they thought. He was real flesh, yes, but born of something darker. blood magic, fire sorcery, a vessel built to carry prophecy, not truth. Arya lowered her blade, then turned and threw it, straight, into Sarala's chest. The false queen gasped, staggered, and laughed. "You think this ends with me?" Arya stepped closer. "No, but it starts." And then Sarala fell. Wait. Deep breath. It's over. Sarala's dead. The myth of Aegon crumbles. The war collapses, but at what cost, and what now? The Iron Throne's gone, the dragons are ash, and the Starks have nothing left to lose. The battle ended by dusk, thousands dead. The child disappeared. No one knew if Arya spared him or if he was just gone, like smoke. In the aftermath, lords begged Sansa to take the throne, to unite them again. She refused. The Irfi. "North will never kneel," she said, "and you shouldn't either." One by one they returned to their lands. Westeros broke apart. No longer one realm, but many. Some saw chaos. Sansa saw peace. Arya left before dawn, once again without a word. South? West? No one knew. Brienne remained in the north. Bran returned to his tree. And Jon never came back. Some say he died beyond the wall. Others say he became something else, a ghost in the snow. But the legend of what they did together, that remained. Queen and a blade, a bastard and a choice, and a realm that chose no king.